This is Autoline Daily, the show dedicated to enthusiasts of the global automotive industry. Tesla reported its second quarter earnings, and the news is both good and bad. Let's start with the basics. It delivered just over 384,000 cars, trucks, and SUVs to customers. That was down 13% from last year. Total revenue came to $22.4 billion, which was down 12%. Its operating profit plummeted 42% to $923 million, and its net profit of $1.1 billion was down 16%. Okay, I'm sure you're all thinking, wow, that's a lot of bad news. Where's the good news, Sean? Well, all the numbers I just gave you compared the second quarter of this year to the same quarter last year. But if you compare this year's Q2 to this year's Q1, Tesla showed some big improvements. Sales were up 14%, revenue was up 16%, operating profit was up 131%, and net profit was up 186%. While the Shanghai and Berlin factories were closed for several weeks in the first quarter to retool for the refreshed Model Y, which hurt the Q1 numbers, the real backlash against Elon Musk really didn't ramp up until the second quarter. So that's why we were surprised to see Tesla show a big improvement. And yet, investors didn't like what they saw. Yesterday, we pointed out that Tesla's stock had a nice run-up for the week. But after the company posted its numbers, the market gave up all those gains. Shares dropped more than 6% on the news. Maybe one thing that investors didn't like seeing is the big drop in regulatory credits. Tesla collected $435 million in credits in Q2, a 50% drop from a year ago, and a 26% drop from Q1. The Trump administration wants to get rid of those credits altogether, which would wipe out a significant amount of income for Tesla. Without it, its Q2 profit would have been down 63%, not 16%. Tesla won't lose all that money. It can still sell regulatory credits in Europe. But the writing is on the wall. We're going to see a significant hit to profits in the quarters to come. Speaking of Europe, the new car market is weak and getting weaker. Automakers sold 1.2 million vehicles in June, down 5%. BMW and Mini showed a nice sales gain. Honda was up a bit, and Mercedes posted a small gain. But every single other car company saw its sales drop. Stellantis fell more than 16% because of big drops at Citroën and Fiat. Even Toyota and the Hyundai Group, who've been successful riding the hybrid wave, had double-digit drops in sales. Tesla saw the biggest fall of all, down almost 40%. Based on sales in the first half, the entire European market is on track to sell 13.6 million vehicles this year, and that's not enough to have a healthy auto industry. And now let's go back to those Honda numbers for a moment. It only sold about 3,700 cars in Europe last month, placing it dead last amongst all manufacturers. Our European viewers are well aware of this, but I'm sure our viewers in the Americas and Asia will be quite surprised to learn that Honda is little more than a niche player in the European market.
Developing today's vehicles. Issues can happen in an instant. When's the best time to solve a problem? The minute you know you have one. Meet Wireless NeoVi Cloud, your secure, off-the-shelf solution empowering real-time collaboration for quick resolution. With Wireless NeoVi Cloud, your team can prevent issues before they can escalate. Driver communication data and remote diagnostics to analyze and resolve your problems using OTA, allowing your executives oversight throughout the process. Wireless NeoVi Cloud, your vehicle update solution in production and on the road. Intrepid Control Systems, driven by your data.
While Tesla's FSD is not approved for use in China right now, its standard ADAS system, or what it calls Autopilot in the US, outperform the ADAS system of every other automaker in China, and some of those systems also have LiDAR. A Chinese media publication put 36 cars through 15 hazardous driving situations, including 6 on the highway and 9 in urban settings. And the Tesla Model 3 and X had the top scores of any vehicle tested in the high-speed scenarios. The Model X was also the only one to avoid the simulation of a wild pig running out into the road, and it took the top score in the urban driving as well. However, no vehicle was perfect, and through the 15 hazardous situations, the publication recorded 216 crashes. That's also reflected in Tesla's safety report that it just released for Autopilot in the second quarter, which shows a regression. The report includes data for miles driven for Tesla vehicles with Autopilot turned on, miles driven with Autopilot turned off, and the U.S. average for miles between crashes. And in the second quarter, miles driven between crashes with Autopilot on declined nearly 3% from a year ago, and it was also down 2.5% in the first quarter. The U.S. and Japan reached a trade deal yesterday that lowered tariffs on Japanese imports from 27.5% to 15%. But Toyota says it wants to see it even lower. While the automaker says it appreciates the deal, it wants to see improved ties between the two countries, as well as, quote, further reductions in tariffs. Previously, Toyota said it expected the 27.5% tariff rate to cost it $1.2 billion. And the U.S. tariffs are also putting a big dent in Hyundai's profits. The automaker released its second quarter earnings and said tariffs cost it more than $600 million, and that it expects an even bigger impact next quarter. Hyundai's chief financial officer says it expects tariffs to, quote, go down a little from the current 27.5% on imports from South Korea, but that it's hard to predict how much it will drop. Good news for anyone that hates stop-start technology: it could become less common, at least in the U.S. As you may remember, back in May, the head of the EPA, Lee Zeldin, posted on social media that, quote-unquote, everyone hates stop-start and that the agency is going to, quote-unquote, fix it. And now President Trump's new big tax bill, which eliminates penalties for missing CO2 targets, also gets rid of credits for automakers that equip emission-reducing technologies like stop-start. Nearly 2/3 of 2023 model year vehicles in the U.S. are equipped with stop-start, and one expert estimates that the credit is worth $30 per vehicle. But now that there's no fines for missing CO2 targets and no credit for installing stop-start, there really isn't any incentive for automakers to keep equipping it. And according to a poll that we asked about stop-start back in May, most of you won't mind seeing it go away. Half of respondents said you don't want it, while 40% said you don't mind it at all. Uber is still going Robotaxi crazy. It's teaming up with Chinese AV company WeRide to launch the very first Robotaxi service in Saudi Arabia. WeRide will provide several dozen Robotaxi vans for an initial test near an airport and busy downtown area, but they plan to transition to a paid service on Uber's platform before the end of the year. The partnership between Uber and WeRide was actually first formed in September of last year, with an announcement to launch Robotaxi services in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. On top of that, Uber has a Robotaxi partnership with Chinese Robotaxi operator Baidu for international markets, and in the U.S., it's working with Waymo, Volkswagen, and Lucid. Honda is going to auction off the last V10 engine it made for Ayrton Senna for the 1990 Formula One season. The engine has been completely disassembled by mechanics from Honda Racing and laid out in a large glass display case. That entire setup will be auctioned off during the Monterey Car Week in the middle of August, and I think this is about one of the coolest things that any race fan could put on display. And while that brings us to the end of this show, don't forget to tune in to Autoline After Hours at 3 p.m. Eastern Time today, when we'll be talking about what vehicles have the best interiors. I hope to see you for that.
Autoline Daily is brought to you by Intrepid Control Systems. Over-the-air engineering boost your game. And by